I just wanted to take a look at a few of the 10 Commandments. So I'm not a religious person, but I do have a foundation in Catholicism. From my understanding, most religions have some basic laws, and I would think that the 10 Commandments are part of or similar to many religions in terms of a basic foundation to follow. I wanted to look at, say, the last 5 commandments. You shall not kill. I would think that pretty much most people believe this one, agree with it. You shouldn't steal. Yeah, a lot of people agree with that one because they realize that they don't want their own things stolen, and you have to work for what you have, and people's possessions are their own, and you don't steal, right? You shouldn't bear false witness against your neighbor, so it means don't lie about people. Sounds good. People don't want you lying about them, so they shouldn't lie about you. Now, you shall not commit adultery. Well, that seems to be one that people don't really care about. They're like, it's okay as long as you don't get caught. Committing adultery, what does that mean? That means that one or both people are married. And I don't know what it is. Is it that marriage doesn't mean what it used to mean, so we just ignore that someone's married in this equation? And does that just mean for you, the person who's married, you're not supposed to do it, but it's okay for the partner who's unmarried to commit adultery with you because they're not the guilty party, they're not married, so it's cool? Or is it okay if they just didn't know you were married because they didn't ask you any questions and they weren't suspicious of you in any way, although they must have seen the red flags, one being that you probably weren't ever allowed to go over to their home. But then again, they may have had 2 or 3 homes. I mean, these people are slick who commit adultery, but it doesn't take too long for you to be able to get the signs, but I'm sure they wait to give you those signs until you're already sexually involved and emotionally attached. They wait for a reason. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. Wow. So I read somewhere, isn't that repetitive? Yeah, it sort of is. One thing said that the reason it's repetitive is because God was doubling down on that one. If you didn't catch it the first time in the 6th or 7th commandment, he says it again in the 9th or 10th commandment. What does you shall not covet your neighbor's wife mean? Well, it means don't commit adultery. It doesn't say if you're married or if you're single that you shouldn't do it. It just says you shouldn't do it. And it means you're not going to possess or have sexual relationship with someone else who's married. Now, you know, it says you shouldn't do it with your neighbor's wife. But, you know, that means husband as well. So, ladies, there are a lot of people who listen to my channel. 70% of them are women. And out of the 70% of women who are here listening to the channel about narcissistic abuse, I would venture to guess that a lot of these women were screwed by a narcissist who was already married. Could have been the same for a man. Not sure. Haven't heard a lot of stories about single men being screwed by a married female narcissist. But do you have any responsibility there? Do you feel any guilt at all? Do you feel like this might be partly karma that's coming to you for having gotten involved with a married man and then later gotten screwed by him and realized he was a narcissist? Or is he really a narcissist? Because married men who cheat, they're not all narcissists, but they will all lie. Does narcissism mean just a liar? Does it mean somebody who's going to just eventually ghost you? Well, I think a married man who gets himself in too deep and decides to end a relationship with a mistress would, possibly ghost you. But I don't know, are there some of you here that are listening that are a little bit deluding yourselves? Did you know that the man was married? Or, are you going to say that, oh, he showed me his divorce papers, or they filed for the divorce, or he's been separated for 2 years, or those kind of excuses that may or may not be true. Many times they're not true. Oh, we can't afford to separate. We still live in the same house, but I sleep in a different room, or I sleep in a different level of the house. I have to stay there to take care of the kids. We work opposite shifts, or she knows about you, or she's having an affair as well. She had an affair first. We're both seeing other people. There can be thousands of excuses. There are some primary ones that the guys like to give. And of course, if you're this woman, that's really what you want to hear, right? To relieve your own guilt, to take the pressure off, that you're not really doing anything wrong. You're just continuing to console a man who's just in this really sad situation that he had gotten himself into, where he's got all this responsibility, not treated well by his wife, his crazy wife, and you're consoling him, and basically you're his friend. You're just, things went a little bit too far, and now that you're attached to him, you're just waiting for his divorce to go through, and then he's going to marry you. Well, from what I read, 9 times out of 10 or more, that doesn't happen. Actually, in my case, it did. The young girl who had an affair with my husband, he did end up marrying her. So, does that mean she did right? Was that the correct thing in the end? So, she got what she wanted, right? I guess. She got a narcissist. Is that what you want to do? Do you want a man who was willing to step out on his wife, and you want him to get divorced from his wife and marry you? Because you'll trust him then, won't you? You'll trust a man that was willing to have you as a mistress, that he won't get bored with you after a couple years and find himself another mistress, by accident. And he's already been well practiced in the excuses that he can give, the lies, and the partial truths. Oh, that you argue. I mean, yeah, who cares? That's what happens. You argue, people get sick, there's a lot of life stressors, okay? So you're willing to provide this kind of like fantasy vacation land secondary supply where you remain golden to the man who's married and just reap all those benefits. Have him partial part of the time, and you have no conscience at all, right? There's absolutely no guilt. If anything, you're angry at the wife. You justify your behavior and you become the one who's jealous. Somehow you end up thinking that you were there first and that you have all these rights and that you just wish, that woman would just, eat shit and die, that she would just go away because she's really impinging on this thing you got going here. And pretty soon, it's like you're home alone, I guess. I've never done it, but this is what I hear. Home alone, you're told you can only call him at certain times, or you can't call him, wait for him to call you. And you waste away your life with somebody who won't give you 100%. And even if they do end up giving you 100% after leaving their wife, because of you, basically, and you have no conscience, no guilt at all. And after that happens, you and him are going to have this just wonderful, trusting relationship, right? Ladies, the 10 Commandments have it in there twice. And it doesn't just mean you shouldn't covet your neighbor's wife. It means you shall not covet your neighbor's husband. You are not innocent in all this. In fact, if we do want to believe that these men have these, uncontrollable urges, which I'm not going to necessarily buy into, they can control themselves. But if we do buy into that, then who really does have the control? Who is supposed to have the impulse control, the scruples, the stability, the decision-making skills, the self-esteem, the ability to set boundaries? If it's not the man, then it must be you. It must be you, the woman, who has that ability. And if you ignore the fact that these are commandments for a reason, you look at the other commandments, you agree with them, but somehow you're able to rationalize that the adultery one just isn't important, or it doesn't apply to you. I'm sorry, miss, but it does. It applies to you. And if the guy didn't have the self-control you need to, you're not going to end up with anything in the end 9 times out of 10. And if you do, it's not going to be anything of quality. Why are you wasting your time? Why are you wrecking homes? I'm not placing all the responsibility on you, obviously. It takes 2 to tango in that sense, where it does take the married man, obviously. I mean, unless you were complete seductress, which happens. So I just wanted to remind people, because I know there's a lot of female listeners that, were involved with this narcissist, but I have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of you, and maybe some that remain quiet and don't comment as much, were actually the other woman. And maybe you're embarrassed, and, the those feelings are there for a reason. Thanks.